Let's execute an immediate, high-gear tactical vector shift away from massive corporate financial fraud schemes in corporate boardrooms and plunge directly into the suffocating, shadow-drenched tracking grids of domestic manipulation, toxic relationship remnants, and the deeply paranoid world of psychological domestic suspense. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored suburban homes, hidden digital surveillance trails, and lethal psychological parameters of a compromised romance with The X, the exceptional, pulse-pounding psychological masterpiece by the absolute undisputed queen of fast-paced domestic dread, Shalini Boland. This high-stakes operational deployment delivers a thrilling look at an operational crossroad where a picture-perfect new relationship, a systematic gaslighting campaign, and an absolute defense of a woman's mental sanity and physical safety collide at terminal velocity. Let's lay out the strategic narrative grid. If you are a fan of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where a resilient, increasingly isolated protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of weaponized text messages, ruined professional reputations, and a deadly ring of protective familial lies, while running a blind survival loop inside a compromised neighborhood ecosystem where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral tracking, timeline reconstruction, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible tormentor, and where the author utilizes an incandescent shattered new beginning unearthing a lethal obsessive scandal diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural survival perimeters, this book is engineered to lock you in. Boland completely dominates the suburban paranoia noir dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating marital anxiety, and heavy psychological depth popularized by genre vargs like Frida McFadden, K.L. Slater, Tennille Hodson, and Sue Watson, while treating modern digital stalking mechanics, interpersonal profiling, and protective survival craft grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the fragile paradise of an idyllic new romance operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of past emotional baggage. When a woman finds what seems to be the perfect partner, she unintentionally steps into the active monitoring zone of her former lover. Behind the beautiful social outings and warm domestic steps lies an intricate matrix of hidden digital tracking footprints, anonymous threatening packages, and tense community interactions. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a layer of normal civilian trust, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden, unexplained threats to her workspace, parsing complex cover stories, and shielding her vulnerable personal stability from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless psychological counteroffensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter, a series of calculated personal sabotage incidents, ranging from ruined professional accounts to chilling home intrusions, points directly to an obsession that refuses to be deleted from history. The official diagnostic metrics of her emotional safety flash white-hot, as the explosive, long-hidden behavioral patterns reveal a toxic historical secret that threatens to permanently decapitate her future. An active tracking sequence engages. The standard boundaries of everyday domestic safety crumble, and our protagonist runs completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active, invisible war where obsessive stalkers, highly manipulative social engineering tactics, and calculation-heavy gaslighting blockades launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her sanity. The tactical parameters instantly explode as her historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the affluent suburban streets and the sterile office spaces into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our veteran survivalist protagonist is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, environmental mapping skills, and raw psychological stamina to maintain her perimeter before her tormentor completely isolates her from her support network. When deceptive family members, indifferent authority figures, and calculation-heavy gaslighting blockades launch aggressive plays to delete her credibility, her survival instincts engage her final deployment tracks. Every midnight shadow outside her window, every silent choice to log and trace an untraceable digital threat behind standard defensive screens, and every intense moment of channeling raw survival willpower chips away at her reliance on original defensive rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the domestic nightmare's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Boland reveals that the true victory requires more than just calling for help or confronting a rival. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense
defense of personal truth and individual survival against a cold, calculating psychological machine, while our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force. A brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes psychological trials shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her independence, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a domestic mystery suspense, psychological action thriller, obsessive stalker drama, high-velocity suburban noir masterpiece that treats deep interpersonal logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unexplained shadow triggers a fatal domestic cleanup energy, where a sudden pause in an empty house, an unexpected shift in a partner's protective physical posture during an active conversation, or a heavy, possessive realization that someone has completely mapped your personal vulnerabilities carries massive structural weight. Boland writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the cold metallic chime of an unexpected anonymous text, the oppressive, heavy atmosphere of a locked, dark bedroom, and the distinct, subtle scent of cold sweat, spilled wine, old letters, expensive tracking tech, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this standalone psychological thriller into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance realistic gaslighting psychological mechanics and genuine high-stakes domestic tradecraft, alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep conceptual hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and marital underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking personal breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The X is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes mystery fiction and dark domestic suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your intender sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating psychological monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your forensic survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the X.